Hello and welcome. I'm Carla Arovic and I'm a Slow Wine Guide contributor. And today I'm doing a virtual visit with Kim Kramer of Kramer Vineyards. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
All right. So I have a bunch of questions to ask you, and we want to find out if there's any changes from what we published in the guide last year about you in terms of your vineyard practices. I know it looks like the wine selection is different. I think you had two sparklings and then the Pinot last year for your wine selections.
Yeah, so we wanted to send through our three most important wines this time that kind of say the most about Kramer, and so that's why we decided to change it up. I think we sent you some unique bottles last year, and so this year we really wanted to we've been thinking a lot about who we are, especially as we approach our 40th anniversary, and so that's why we made those changes.
Cool. 40 years, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want me to go ahead and I can just start asking you the questions, and then usually what I like to do is wait until towards the end to have you take me through the wine selection and, your comments about it, the flavors and the flavor profile and all of that. Would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah. Let's create some context.
Okay. Awesome. So as a business, this year obviously has been very unusual. How have you guys been, just getting through it? Have you created some innovative practices, or are you doing things differently, or how has all of this affected running a wine business?
So for us, it was huge. Our tasting room is the life of our business. We sell most of our wine through the tasting room and to the wine club. And so when we had to close in mid-March, we were initially really concerned about how that shutdown was going to affect us. And so we kind of felt those feelings and got over that, and then realized that no matter what was going on with our tasting room being open, that people still needed wine. And so we've really focused on communicating with our customers through various email campaigns, our website, and our social media posts, and really tried to meet people where they're at, give them the information that they're looking for, solve their problems as best we can in our role here. And it worked out really well. We're still here, and we feel like if we do have to close down again at some point because of this terrible virus, that we'll be able to weather that.
That's encouraging. That's nice. And I would imagine that your customers wanted to continue to support you and make sure that you were thriving during this difficult time too.
Yeah, that part was great. So we've been around for a long time. We most of us know our customers really, really well. It's not unusual for me to be doing wine service myself, and for my folks to be here as well. And so we have people that have been coming up here since the very beginning when we opened our tasting room in 1990. And so I think because of that, people were extra wanting to support us. And it was really lovely to have that outpouring of, sometimes people would just come up for a bottle, and then other people would have us ship 3 cases, and all of it was because of that relationship that we have. So yeah, that was really, really lovely and a nice unexpected part of this situation.
Nice. Any profound changes in your company? I know it's a family business, but because of all of the kind of upheaval, have how the day-to-day things get done, has that changed at all?
Front of house more than back of house. So on the production side, things are going pretty much as they always have been. A lot of the cellar work and bottling and so forth can be done with the same 3 people that we've been sheltering with. So that part's going is business as usual. It's the front of house that's dramatically changed. So our tasting room has been open for about a month now. We have to have more staff members to serve fewer guests because there's just a lot more required of our staff now. And which, you know, on the one hand, our staff, we're asking more of our staff than ever before, but they're really, really stepping up. And I think that when people come here, they feel safe and relaxed at the same time because of the structures that we've put in place. So that's been the biggest change.
Nice. Yeah, it's been a really interesting time. Hopefully all the people that are coming back are understanding of the fact that things aren't going to function like they did for some time.
Yeah, our people have been great. We have had zero issues with people being upset with the changes. Everybody that comes up here, they're happy to be here. They're happy to be out in the world, and I think have appreciated the steps that we've taken to limit their risk and our risk, and so it's been an overall really positive experience.
It's such a beautiful setting.
Yeah.
You just
yeah,
feel
that's
like
true.
you feel like you're a million miles away.
Well, yeah, and for where we're located on our property, you really do feel like you're on top of the world in this like vineyard oasis. So we're surrounded by forest on most sides, and then we've got the vineyard right here. So you're really kind of have this great like in the vineyard tasting experience even from the moment you drive in.
Are you doing more outdoor seating?
All outdoor seating.
Okay.
So our tasting room is being remodeled right now. And also it's just, I think when the vineyard is full and green and lush, that's where people want to be anyway. And so we're going to try and keep tasting outside for as long as possible. It's the most beautiful way to experience things here. It's the safest way to do things. And we just have more space to put people.
Good. Could you talk about your family business and kind of how people's roles are structured, and has that changed recently, or is everybody still really involved in all of the running of things?
Yeah, so I'm head winemaker. I work a lot with my dad, who is really great at winery ops, but his primary role is in the vineyard. And then my mom, who was formerly the head winemaker, is the main boss. She's the one that makes sure that everybody gets paid and that we've filled the reports we need to fill out so that we can stay in business. And then my sister is the winery director, and she does a lot of work with my mom and managing the tasting room staff and the hospitality and the things. So we started in 1984. My parents planted most of the vineyard themselves, and then they opened up the tasting room in 1990. I'm a more recent addition to the company. I started here in 2008, harvested 2008. And then my sister has just has been here for 3 years.
Okay, nice. I'll bet they love having both of you back and in the business.
We all agree they love it.
That's awesome. Cool. Any changes to vineyard management in the last year, and are you using a vineyard management company?
We're not. We're working with the same vineyard crew that has been helping us out in the vineyard since the late 1980s. And so although we might change to meet the demands of each vintage, we've had the same crew. My dad is putting in probably more hours than he ever has in the vineyard, because he's one of those if you want something done right, you do it yourself. And so we've talked about changing things up, but it seems to be working for us. So I think I think that will stay in place for the next few vintages.
Nice.
Dad really likes the work, so I don't know if we'll ever be able to get him off the tractor.
That's not such a bad thing, though.
Yeah.
And I think it's really awesome that you have the same vineyard crew that you've had for decades. That's really nice. It brings a continuity to everything.
Yeah, when you have that level of familiarity, then you can look back historically on what you've done, and also there's kind of a shorthand when you're delegating tasks. So we kind of have this arrangement with them where we see that we're nearing a growth milestone or a big vineyard job. Like right now, for example, they've been doing shoot positioning and hedging, and we don't really call them up and say, hey, it's time to do this now. They know it's time to do this now, so they come up when it works for them, and it's been a really great arrangement, especially during harvest, because I often will get on the picking schedule first, which means if I have my grapes coming in the morning, then I have all day to get them in the press or get them into a fermentation vessel.
Nice. That's awesome. How would you? I'm sorry, I was going to ask you about wine growing practices and wine quality. Have you? Yeah. I'm assuming that because you have a really stable and experienced vineyard crew that are knowledgeable about your vines and your soil and the terroir, that's impacting the wine making, your side of the business.
I would say that my role is really minor compared to what happens out in the field, and that really relates to how the wine is made too. We have 27 distinctive blocks in our 22-acre vineyard, and a lot of wines that we make are single block wines. They're very inextricably tied to these small pieces of delineated property that we have, and so every decision that I make, from when the grapes come in to what we do with them, all goes back to where that fruit is sourced from in the vineyard and what those grapes are grown for.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So if you had to describe your winemaking style, what would you say about it?
Transparent, true to, as I mentioned before, true to the site. My biggest thing is that, so my dad, who's going to be 72 next month, both my parents, but dad is more so now, works really, really hard in the vineyard to produce the best grapes that he can. And it's my job to respect that during every single winemaking step. So it's honoring that, honoring the property, and then and honoring the agreement that I have with my customers and club members to put out wines consistently that I know that they're going to enjoy.
Okay. I'm just writing a couple things down. What qualities would you like your wine to have?
I think the most important quality is that the wines stand the test of time. One of the things that I've always been interested in sparkling wine, but Pinot Noir I was a little bit slower to love. And the wines that have been the most compelling for me are the ones that we've opened that my parents made 20 or 30 years ago. I just think it's such an impressive achievement to open a 20 or 30-year-old bottle and still find more to learn about that vintage, and still find life and possibly even that it has more time to go. I just, for me, that's a real accomplishment in this business, is to have that. Of course, in order to have that longevity, then you have to have a wine that's well made in the first place. It has to be from an excellent fruit source and skilled hands. And so I think that if you have longevity, then you have all of those other things that we value as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Do you find most of your customers are aging their wines, drinking them early, or, as you release them, or maybe both?
I wish. So there's definitely a segment of our clientele that that hold on to their wines. I think with the Pinots, for example, most of the Pinots reach this really nice first peak 5 to 7 years after they've been in the bottle, and then they'll go on to peak a few more times. And there's a subset of our clientele that has a cellar for aging like that, but most of them, chances are the wine won't be there anymore by the end of the year, which is fine because I'll have more to give them after the next harvest. But so yeah, it's balancing those two things. I have to make wines that taste good when we're pouring them in the tasting room also. But I think that in most vintages with most wines, you can have both.
Nice. Would you like to take me through your 3 selections?
I'm sorry?
Would you like to take me through your 3 selections?
Oh, yes,
Your wine.
yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. I can't wait to sample that. I love your sparkling wines. I think they are beautiful.
Thank you very much. So sparkling wine is why I'm here. I love sparkling wine. It's my I've always been drawn to it, and so being able to make sparkling from my family's vineyard is a real privilege of mine. So we have 3 blocks for this wine. Chardonnay that was planted in '84, our original Chardonnay vines. And then I have a block of Pinot Noir that historically has had a lot of green bits in the fruit at harvest, which is not great for red wine. But when I realized that was happening, I thought perfect for sparkling production. And then I have a block of Pinot Meunier that we planted in 2010 specifically for the sparkling program. So the blend will fluctuate depending on the harvest yield from each of those blocks. Sometimes we have a Chardonnay dominant blend, as is the case with the 2017 Brut. Sometimes we have a Pinot Noir dominant blend. It just really depends on how the year goes. And it's never really made sense to me to construct this wine based on on our blending style here, because I don't blend anything otherwise. So it makes sense for the vintage to determine what the blend is going to be based on the yield. And I've been happy with the wine having that perspective. As far as this wine's all stainless fermented. I've been experimenting with neutral French oak as a blending component for some of the other sparkling wines, but for this one, I really want it to be fresh and clean and crisp. That's a style of sparkling that I really like. I want it to have small, plentiful bubbles. I think flat sparkling is sad sparkling, and yeah, I just want it to kind of wake up the palate, enliven the mouth. And so because I prefer drier sparkling, we'll do very low or no dosage in the finishing of the wine too.
Okay. And what are some of the, do you want to talk about the flavor profile?
So we often will get, so the Chardonnay will contribute citrus and tree fruit. The Pinot Noir will give us strawberries and Rainier cherries, depending on vintage. And then the Pinot Meunier gives us this really wonderful fleshy quality in the mid-palate that I wasn't finding in this wine before Pinot Meunier started being a major component. And so that's kind of the way I would describe this.
Okay, nice. And the finish?
Long but crisp at the same time. So you have this nice slip from the bubble, but I think that yeah, there's still a lingering aspect to it, and which my dad always boasts is because we're using primarily old vine fruit to make this.
Cool. Can't wait to try it. All right. And then which one would you like to describe next? The
Let's
Mueller
move to
Thurgau?
the Mueller Thurgau, the 2018 Mueller Thurgau.
Mm-hmm.
So Mueller, so where most wineries in this area, their most important white wine is going to be Chardonnay or Pinot Gris. Ours is Mueller Thurgau. We don't have very much in the vineyard, 2.5 acres, I think, but the vines are very productive. So we'll get double or triple the yield from Mueller Thurgau than we do from Pinot Gris or Chardonnay. And it's a really versatile grape variety. So this particular one is tank fermented, so all stainless, nice and crisp and fruity. I've done a drier barrel fermented one. We sparkle it. I've done a late harvest dessert style wine from it as well. In this vintage, we started crushing the grapes before pressing. So we'll invite people to come up here and I'll wash their feet and they'll hop in the picking bins and step on them for me. And that was a real game changer in terms of how much flavor we were able to get from this fruit. Mueller Thurgau, up until this vintage, I've been a little frustrated with, because when you taste the grapes, they're delicious. There's just so much going on. And I felt like only a portion of that was in the wine. But when we started crushing, there's just so much more going on aromatically on the palate and the finish. I'm always going to crush Mueller Thurgau going forward. Plus, it's easier to load the press when the fruit's all mashed up first. So I like that.
Nice.
So yeah, Mueller Thurgau has this really great tropical, spicy quality to it. So we find star fruit, lychee, melon. Often there's a cinnamon aspect to it as well. It's got interesting chemistry in that it has a low pH but low titratable acidity. So it looks deceptively acidic. It's actually very light and smooth. And this particular vintage was finished with a little bit of residual sugar, but not as much as what we've done in the past. So this one will be between 0.5% and 1.5% residual, depending on vintage, depending on the acid profile. I find that Mueller Thurgau needs just a little bit for that fruit to pop. Otherwise, it kind of gets a bit dull. But yeah, I'm really proud of this 2018 vintage. I think that this is the best Mueller Thurgau that we've made to date.
Nice. All right. Anything else you want to say about that?
It's our most popular white, which is surprising to me because nobody knows how to pronounce Mueller Thurgau, and we're
I didn't realize I was saying it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think that it's a credit to what we're doing with it, and also the way that we're presenting it to folks, that it's really emerged as being our best-selling wine overall.
What year were the vines planted?
Our first Mueller Thurgau vines were planted in '86.
Wow.
And we've slowly expanded over the years. Our biggest block is actually on Riesling rootstock that was planted in '84. But our Riesling just in the '90s just sat here. And so we decided to graft it over to Mueller Thurgau, which I've been wondering if maybe we should ungraft some of those old Riesling vines. But it's hard to justify because the Mueller Thurgau is doing so well for us.
And what was the decision to plant Mueller Thurgau in the first place?
Well, so my dad took a vineyard management course in the early '80s, and in his words, one of the students in the class wouldn't shut up about Mueller Thurgau, and so he remembered the grape variety. And then in the mid '80s, when we were waiting for our vineyard to start producing grapes, but my parents still wanted to make wine, they bought grapes from Courting Hill Vineyard in Banks, and Jim Layden had some Mueller Thurgau there. And so they decided to buy some grapes from his property and make the wine, and they really liked it. And so that was what led them to plant some on our estate here.
That's so interesting, because it's not a varietal that you hear a lot about in our area.
Yeah. Yeah, and there used to be more than there is right now. I think when I was in winemaking school in 05, 06, there were about 160 acres in the Lima Valley of Mueller-Thurgau. That number has dwindled to 60. I think in large part because Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, and Riesling are just more recognizable to people. But
Yeah.
I love it. Mueller-Thurgau does really well here. It gets ripe when it's warm. It gets ripe when it's hot. It gets ripe when it's wet. It gets ripe when it's dry. When in these vintages that are highly variable, Mueller-Thurgau getting ripe is the least of my concerns. So yeah, I think we'll always have it as part of our program here.
Excellent. All right. You want to talk about the Pinot?
Yeah. All right. So 2017 Pinot Noir estate. So in 2017, we had the largest harvest that we've ever had. Our vineyard is, we're used to harvesting and processing 60 to 70 tons of grapes annually from our 22-acre property. In 2017, that number was closer to 100 tons. And a lot of that was because the clusters were just so big. And I think that we didn't realize until the grapes started coming in how much bigger those clusters were. And so kind of inspired by the cluster size, I really went in on whole cluster fermentation for the Pinots. So all of our ferments in 2017 were at least 2/3 whole cluster fermentation. And for the estate Pinot, it's probably a little closer to 3/4 whole cluster. For that wine, we source from an area of our vineyard that has some of our oldest vines, planted between 85 and 88, and consists of the first 3 clones that were available to us. So the Pommard, Batesville, and then the Gamay Beaujolais upright clone of Pinot Noir. And it's the largest area of our vineyards. So this is the largest bottling of Pinot Noir that we do annually. Depending on vintage, that can mean it's 150 cases. We've done as much as 400 cases.
That's a big variation.
Yeah, well, it's been unreal since I've been winemaker. Our total production has swung from 1,600 cases all the way up to almost 5,000. So a lot of that has to do with odd spring events that interfere with the set, and then other things that happen during the vintage that peel away at how much fruit you have at the end of the year to work with.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So tell me about how it tastes. What are the aromas? How do I experience it on my palate?
So I think with all of our Pinots have some sort of cherry thing happening. In 17, I get a lot of red cherry and cherry cola, baking spices. There's often a strawberry note, and also from the whole cluster, there's a bit of poppy carbonic fruit happening as well. I think that this is one of our more approachable Pinots. Again, because of those large clusters, there's just not a lot of skin tannins in here. And also with the choice to go that much whole cluster, and with the small fermentation sizes that we have, the fermentation temperatures are such that we're not pulling a lot of those rougher tannins from the grapes. And so I've been really surprised the response, especially after coming off of the really intense, concentrated, dense 2016 Pinots. I thought our clientele might find the 17s kind of light, but that's not the case at all. Our customers really enjoy how smooth and round and full those wines are on the palate.
Sounds lovely. Can't wait to try it.
One of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though you love sparkling wine, and probably that sounds like that's your first love.
Yeah, well, we can have multiple loves, but also I think sparkling wine is a really good way to start an evening or start an event or start a visit with a friend, and then you can kind of graduate to something else a little later.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I also need to know what your total production is, total case production.
So average total case production is probably somewhere around 3,000.
Okay.
But we haven't really had an average year in a while. So so I might I might have to crunch some numbers and get back to you. It's got to be somewhere around 3,000.
Okay. Excellent. All right. And then the last thing I want to check with you on is if any of your vineyard practices have changed in terms of fertilizer, plant protection, weed control, yeast, grapes from last year.
I don't think so.
Okay. I can send you the listing from last year so you can take a look at it and just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so. Really, are we talking difference from 19 to 20 or from 18 to 19?
Well, this would have been for the guide came out in 2020, so it would have been for the 2019.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Especially since this last harvest was really, really small. So I will probably be wanting to be conservative and consistent with what we've been doing until I feel like I have more room to grow.
Uh-huh. That makes sense. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about in terms of your winemaking or vineyard practices, or anything that you think would be relevant?
I think one of the things that I didn't really realize until recently is that there are things you can measure, and then there are things that you just kind of know. And like, I know what ripe Chardonnay tastes like when it's ready to be harvested for sparkling versus still wine, because I grew up eating these grapes my entire life. And I think that there's just this level of familiarity with the property and with our fruit and our cellar systems that that are really make what we're doing unique because we've been at this for as long as we have. So yeah, I think that I'm in a really unique position to try and figure out what to do with this fruit because I've been eating these grapes my entire life.
That's certainly a challenge.
Well, it is and it isn't. You know, I think one of the great things about how our business model is set up, and then just kind of with the freedom that my family gives me in the creative process, is that my first responsibility is to deliver great wines for my wine club members and our clientele. And if I can do some fun things within that, then I can do some really cool experimental things. And so being able to build on that every single year is pretty exciting, especially when I learn that our people are willing to go with me in those directions.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to stop the recording. Do you have anything else you want to say on the record?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.